Hi everyone, my name is Braden and this is Airless Cool 9. I wanted to take a moment to look at the two videos that were released talking about some of the art and design in the 2024 Player's Handbooks, or just in the 2024 Player's Handbook so far, as well as the Dragon redesigns that they've done. The Dragon redesign video came out on Friday the 11th. But I didn't do a video on it because it was only 7 minutes long. But there was a video that just came out about art and design in the handbook that is 20 minutes long, so I figured I would just do both of these in the same video. For those who are interested in this kind of content, I like art, and I'm happy that there's going to be a lot of it in the player's handbook. So figured we would watch these together, and I'll give you my thoughts, even though art is subjective. And I'm mostly just wanting to look at the designs and kind of just see some of the cool artwork that they're going to be putting in these books. So I'm going to start with the Dragon Redesigns video since that's the older one. And let's just give it a look here.
I've merging two different editions. One. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when we did all of the dragons together, when we were looking at them all, the way that I approached that was basically two casts of 5, larger cast of 10, right? So thinking about them as my perspective on character design or creature design thing that can talk and walk and has motives and motivation, it's a character. It's not actually a creature. It's not a monster. So how do we look at these characters
Oh,
as a
look,
set
that's
of 10?
nice. I
So we
want
got
the
a
alternate
chance to
cover
kind of approach them
for
almost
sure.
from, not, I wouldn't say a clean slate, but looking at what was there in 2014, looking at the text, reading the monster manual, reading every entry, understanding where they live, what their motivations are, where their biome is, and trying to create visual designs that, looking back at the previous editions, all of them, what was working really well there, what do we want to bring forward? And so we look at the Gold Dragon. That's a good example of, we liked kind of the first and second edition vibe of how it was there. And that was somewhat maintained through fifth edition styles. But we wanted to kind of go back and harken back to that previous design in a way to help separate it from the crew. Because there was, even within the metallics, the gold does sort of stand apart as being different in a way. It's more mysterious, mercurial. It likes to be in its own space. It likes to live isolated in a way. Whereas the silver dragon is very opposite, right? It's personable and it's happy to engage and talk with people, and most of the other ones are too. It kind of felt like creating a separate creature entity from like a metagaming, power gaming standpoint. Also, if you could create a perfect dragon to beat
The
the red
art is really
dragon, it would
nice.
basically be the gold, especially if you make it have
The
wings, but
design
it
is
doesn't need
cool.
to fly.
Very
Because now
nice.
what you have is you have a dragon that is immune to fire, one of the biggest threats. It can fly, but it doesn't need its wings. And it's
Hmm.
aquatic, so it can breathe underwater for a long time. So you have a very easy counter to your red dragon. Basically, a long coiling snake-like serpentine dragon that could wrap around a red dragon, be immune to fire, and then drown it.
And that still has a weakness.
That seems to confirm that gold dragons, at the very least, will have hover as a part of their flying speed. So the wings are more stylistic in a sense. They fly by seemingly magic, which is really neat. And I just love the coil serpent design of the gold dragon. That it's very cool and it's very juxtaposed to the red dragon itself. They're like two different dichotomies. And yeah, I can see how the gold dragon has that advantage against the red dragon just by being immune to fire and then being able to hover. And like you said, he can breathe underwater too. So I guess a gold dragon could try to drown a red dragon, which is kind of cool.
Prey as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there you go. So there was a lot of thought in that of like, this just feels like it makes sense.
I was struck by the loneliness of
Yeah.
it just being in this isolated, dead civilization,
Mm-hmm.
and it just swirling in this all of
Yeah.
it. This very kind of beautiful, gorgeous thing.
Yes.
It's a very
amongst
nice
all
art
this
piece.
decay.
That was so much what we wanted, was that when you look at it, there's sort of a little bit of a sadness. There's a little bit of a quietness to that, a calmness to that, a little bit of like a melancholy, right? Where this is a creature that would sit and think about that types of stuff in a way. Like it's probably more interested in a ruined kingdom because of why it fell and how it fell, thinking about history in that way. Creating an image that can hopefully evoke that right away, that this is a creature that is different, that it thinks and acts is different. And we tried to do that very intentionally with all of the metallic illustrations of showing how they would interact with people. So on the silver dragon, it was showing sort of an opposite of the coin in the metallic. It's very different, right?
Yeah.
It's all
Cool.
about celebration, and it's this massive creature in the middle of this city or arena where it's like celebrating this war or something that they've come home to, and everybody is like happy that this is finally over, and their champion is kind of telling them that peace is here, right? Whereas the gold dragon is kind of isolated and alone and thinking about the future.
So we're talking about dragons. I'm also really excited that we have this digital dragon art book that comes with anyone who pre-orders the digital physical bundle on D&D Beyond. And this is over 50 pages. It's 100 pieces of art. There will be a lot of pieces only seen in this book, about 25 plus, where we're really showing the steps along the way to these final designs. And we have a lot of really great orthographics of each dragon that really kind of illustrate the scenes, and these kind of bring the dragons to life. And so the other dragons had redesigns as well. Like,
They did.
How did you kind of like ramp up these classic designs?
Yeah, for each of them, we wanted to play up what was there, right? Especially in their personality. And the black dragon is basically all about ruin and death and decay and hate. It's evil in the purest incarnation of evil, in the fact that it hates everything. It probably hates itself. You know, it just genuinely is a despicable creature. So how do you portray that? When you look at this creature, this character, you should have zero question. This is an evil creature. This is a bad creature. That this is something you can try to parlay with and talk with, but the likelihood of it is not super high, you know, of it going well. So we really wanted to play up, you know, sort of that. I remember actually reading the 2014 manual. I think it said something along the lines of, when an ancient dragon gets to that age, that skin starts to slough off of its face. And so just thinking about, what does that look like? Probably bones under there. There's probably really thin skin that's like stuck to its face, you know, so making that almost translucent, and just exploring what that could be to play up the sort of what you could there. And there's a lot to play with there, actually, to make this creature feel really, really gross and really evil.
And then the red dragon has this, it's massive. I mean, you get a sense of how massive the silver dragon is because you have the context of the crowd around it in the arena. The red dragon is just enormous.
It's huge. Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah. Yeah, the red dragon is huge. We wanted to update the red, and the red was the one we probably updated the least. You know, it's sort of the most iconic. The things we wanted to play up with that one most was sort of the threat. If you think about a cast of 5, what is that leader of those 5 kind of like, right? So this is the apex predator, in a way of all of the chromatics, and in a way of all of the true dragons. So bigger, more ferocious, more angry, more vain, more terrifying, is whatever we can do to like push that, is what we were going.
And you can get the digital dragon art book as a bonus for anyone on D&D Beyond who pre-orders.
Okay, so that's pretty much all there is on the dragon. I am a little disappointed that they didn't showcase every single dragon. They really only focused on gold and red a little bit, and then they kind of showed off green and black, but that was it. So I really would like to see the rest of the dragons, especially the rest of the, at least the last 2 chromatic dragons. But they didn't show those or the rest of the metallics. But the art does look very nice, I will say that. Alrighty. So now let's look at a bunch of all the other art in the 2024 Player's Handbook that's going to be released.
It is some of the best layout I've ever seen in my life in a book. This art feels like it's flying out at me, and that feels like a very intentional layout design. Is that correct?
That is correct. That particular concept was called Portal. It took its inspiration more so from proto-Renaissance and medieval religious art, like altarpieces, things that were meant to evoke a space that allowed a transference between worlds. The core books are your portal in a completely different world. So that's where that sort of framing mechanism originated from.
The monk
The
art
art
does
for the
look
new
cool.
Player's Handbook has a very deliberate and intentional style
Oh,
I've
the
never
tiefling
seen
art?
in a D&D book, where like
They're
a
cool.
story is always being told
Oh my gosh, yeah.
in a much more in-depth way. Warlock Pact of the Great Old Ones is amazing.
That's
It's
a
one of my
cool
favorite
art.
pieces because they're just standing there in front of the ocean, and all the tentacles are erupting behind them.
Oh, yeah.
And like with all the warlocks, their patron is visible.
There is. Have fun finding them. But that one in particular, if you notice, she's perhaps got a little missing eye. And one of our sorcerers has a jar with a little green eye in it. Did they trade?
Wow.
Are they friends? Maybe.
Wow.
That's
Maybe
funny.
not friends. See, that's the
That's
kind
cool,
of stuff I
though.
absolutely get obsessed with.
Yeah.
This is a very art-heavy book. I
It
feel like
is.
even if you weren't reading the book, you would understand.
I really like this art piece of the beholder and the behir fighting each other. They're both magicians. I keep looking at that beholder design, like that's insane. It has a beard and it's holding a staff with a eyeball on it with one of its eye stalks. And then the behir has a cloak and a bunch of rings on its fingers. It's really neat. Rival mages use shape change to transform into a beholder and a behir during a magical duel. Oh, okay, so that's what happened. That's what's happening there. That's neat. That's such a fun art piece, though. That's really cool.
And D&D,
Yeah.
just visually flipping through it.
Yeah, a book, especially with how big these are now. Like, it's grown
That's
since we've last met 10 years.
thick. Trying to see like what it's comparable to. And Baldur's Gate is a chunky book, and it looks like it's about. It's large. It's definitely larger than that. I think they said it has like 380 pages too, so that makes sense why it's a little chunkier than all the other books.
Years ago.
And it's
And
also interesting that they reversed the color palette for these updated books too, on the spines at least. Kind of neat.
I know that picking up a book like that, knowing there's rules inside and content to comprehend, especially if you're a new player, that can be like, at least for me, it would be immediately a little bit intimidating. But then if you open it up and you see, wait a minute, there's these pieces of art that's complementing the text, that's, showing what this spell describes. Hopefully that'll kind of pull people in a little gentler and make the transition a little bit easier.
Art is done a certain way at the beginning of every class, and art is done a very specific way for every subclass. So I feel like even
Berserker
visually, if I was like
Barbarian.
just throwing through the book, I'd probably know where I was.
This handbook, more so than maybe any in the past, has really had a lot of scrutiny in terms of like user experience. I would say that the communication design, the bare bones graphic design of this book, Jeremy, Chris, James and Wes deserve a graphic design credit just as much as I do, or Trish, or Tristan, because a lot of the changes you will see in the book are about hierarchy, making things more scannable, even like something as minute as making the page numbers bigger and scooting them out to the edges more, because this is a guidebook.
Ooh, armor. Armor design. Plate armor, chainmail, split mail, ring mail, hide, chain shirt, scale mail, breastplate, half plate armor. Look neat. And you can see here too, it doesn't look like they changed the C's on any of these. Oh, they've included the time it takes to don and doff up here. In the name, in the armor type, rather than, I mean, I'm sure they list it somewhere else, but that's just to make it clear so you don't have to look through the book. That's pretty nice. Got some other art up here too.
Decisions around hierarchy,
Shields,
shifting type styles,
studded, leather,
it's not the most exciting
and
thing to
padded.
talk about, but it's probably the most impactful from a communication design perspective, in that it's allowing folks to scan and use this book in a more impactful and faster way.
That feels like the entire book. Like, it's a very easy read, and it's a very easy book to know where you are at. And there feels like a momentum even when you're building characters. Like, you have even art that is like line art, black and white line art that's there while you're making your character, and then things build up and you start picking your subclass, and now the subclass art is all very colorful, and fully realized. It's just kind of a remarkable experience as a book, especially as someone who's grown up with every player's handbook, to see how things have progressed.
And that's the whole point of D&D, right? It's storytelling. So there should be storytelling in all of the art. You should be able to look at a picture, and there should be something there that tells you that there's more than what you see.
I'm weirdly obsessed with the Oath of Vengeance Paladin multi-class with the Warlock, Pact of the Old Ones. The fact that we're seeing multi-class art is fantastic.
Yeah, that was a fun one. We spent a lot of time on all the character designs for the subclasses as well, so being able to mix them, and especially in one image, is pretty great. And that was one of our favorite combos too. That sort of edginess of the Oath of Vengeance Paladin, and sort of the tentacle weirdness, right, of the ancient old one. You get some nice combos there.
Is there one piece that is like a personal favorite, or is that too?
Oh, I have a lot of pieces that are personal favorites. The one that actually sticks out the most for me is not what you would expect, but there's an illustration of this little gnome talking into a crystal ball with what looks like their mom or grandma or somebody, and they're just having like a really nice conversation with each other, but it's authentic to the world in a way. It's like, yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, they might just be talking to each other, like as a family, like they're catching up, like almost like the phone. So that's probably one of my favorite pieces. It's really charming and it's really sweet. If I had to pick another piece, I think I really love the Glamour Bard.
That goes
really cool
the
piece.
rock star, yeah. The rock star of the Feywild sort of place, right? You see that. I think the Bard is a good example, but I think all of the classes do that, of trying to show how
It's a really neat art
class
piece.
overall plus the subclasses can be different. So whether it's like the subject matter of like dance versus glamour, or is it just, but even like the type of personality that could embody all of those could be totally different. So the Glamour Bard is also a personal favorite that I like to play. So when that one was being included in the 24 PH, I was like, yes, this one, I want this to be the rock star. We need to make this the rock star.
Spell art is really fun because you are given some boundaries. There are things to work with. The spell needs to work a certain way. It affects a certain area, right?
Yeah.
A certain space. If it's one of those, like say the fireball spell, if you might have seen that one. It's a wizard casting this incredible, it almost looks like a thin, streamlined flamethrower, I
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Like, so that interpretation of it was spectacular. And there's maybe an empty clearing in a forest full of spiders, and she is just having a ball and clearing the area. And it's like the lighting of that, along with just her pose and like just the confidence it's eerily it's so thrilling.
I love seeing the Hunger of Hadar and how horrifying Hunger of Hadar is, because it's a horrifying description, but to also see the art behind that
Yeah.
is fantastic.
Right, and it's always a learning experience for me, especially for somebody who does not play a spellcaster, to be like, well, you know, to read the description and be like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna be commissioning that to be depicted, and then have it come in, and then, you know, have Jeremy kind of look over it and be like, well, it needs to be a little bit more like horrifying.
We have to talk about the familiars.
Oh, that's what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so find familiar spell. Did you know it just wasn't a regular owl?
It's so perfect because it shows you that you don't just have to summon a standard owl. Like, it can have a personality. It can be quirky and strange.
No, we're fighting
They're really cool.
like oozes that come at us. Why would we just have I mean, we can just have an owl, but I mean, it's so funny that I've always thought, oh, find familiar is, you know, this very sweet, mundane creature, and to have the artist say like, it can actually be wearing a top hat,
Yeah.
or be just a completely bonkers spider creature, was
Yeah,
just
that's
so
really neat.
delightful. And I'm like, oh, this shows the example to the players of what it could be.
What is it about ugly cute?
What is
Like,
it?
the giant eyeball with spider legs is like kind of cute.
The little teeth around
Yeah.
its eye?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just could be hanging out on your shoulder. It's fantasy at its best because you know this is your familiar, so it's gonna be your little buddy.
The art and the design does such a great job of explaining what D&D is visually. Everything feels like an education, like edutainment, right? Like every piece of art is like fantastic, but they're also demonstrating something now. Like, you look at Warlock art and you understand a lot more about Warlocks.
Oh yeah.
The
like
Wizard,
that
same
one,
thing.
too.
Like, you feel who this person is about, and that comes down to like the artwork for the different species, and that comes down to several different key parts of like even the cover art and stuff like that. Like, it's all informative of what this experience is.
I think a great example that turned out even, I think, well in layout, but also just in the art itself and how it's presented is like the weapons and armor. It's like the first time I had actually like seen hide armor depicted. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
wear that. And understanding like the difference between a pike and a lance and a spear, you know, actually seeing, I was like, oh, okay. That section's astounding. Basically the Sears Roebuck catalog.
I
of
feel like that
figurines, so to
just makes it a lot
But it's seeing
better
every
design-wise.
piece of armor and all the
The fact that you can see the things that you're using helps stimulate your imagination.
weapons that you find in the equipment section visualizes. Super satisfying. And that was a nice little Tetris puzzle to pull together as a layout.
Yeah, I almost want a mini game where I'm just like, okay, this is my subclass. This is my background, literally in the background, with the background art, which is intentional as well, right?
Absolutely. That is another huge visual addition to this player's handbook. You're not seeing person visualized because that's not what it's important. It's the environment that you came from that sort of defines your, you know, who defines who you are. And being able to see those environments, we have astounding art, and they're all sort of like landscape visualizations of a place. And that was another one similar to the subclass being
And that's nice. I like that.
verticals on the outside of the page. Deciding early on, this is how we're going to do backgrounds. How would layout work with that? And doing a unique layout instead of just like the 2-column format.
The species art is very much setting the table for what these species are kind of about.
These tieflings look so interesting. They all have different horn styles, different skin colors, different eye colors, hairstyles, hair color. Designs are just so different. Really neat.
Wow.
Yes.
You know, or like in
But they're all distinctly tieflings as well, which is cool.
a sense of like different members of that species. Like the Goliaths are moving this giant pillar of rock. You've got
Yeah.
gnomes all working to kind of build.
Their little construct.
Yeah, they're little constructs, which I love, and
The
they
shield
each have their
guardian.
own individual personalities. Like,
Yeah, there's so many wonderful, again, storytelling details in the species section. The artist did some really gorgeous knockout framings for the elf species section. Like you can see the architecture knocked out from like it's just beautifully done. And then the dwarf species opener, like they're working. You know they're working on some amazing, like well-made, maybe weaponry or something. But then there's also someone coming to deliver some baked goods,
Yeah.
and a little child who's learning maybe the ways of dwarven fine artistry. There's just so many little details each one, and the orc one is so charming too. Like you just see a family, like a community,
yeah,
and everybody. There's so much personality in each of these. Gives it so much more depth too. You're like, what kind of community did I
All
belong
the human
to?
ones.
yeah. Which of these am I
Yeah,
potentially?
yeah,
Yeah. So the new player's handbook does feel like a love note to the history of like D&D art, because we have some of the styles are from older books,
yeah.
and some of the styles are styles we've never seen before, and it feels like it's so much from the past, but so much from the future as well in terms of style. It's fascinating to watch. Even listening to like Tyler Jacobson talk about the cover, trying to evoke some of those older Easley paintings.
Yeah.
In the cover. There's even a piece of art that is showing off, different worlds. You see Raceland and Caramon fighting off a wyvern. I feel like all the art is kind of showing you a multiversal view of D&D, but also the history of D&D all at once.
Right. I mean, there's so much of it. There's 50 years of it. And that's not counting how many worlds that our players have built on their own. It's being able to nod back to our past and all of the things that mean so much to people, and then continue to move it forward and expand
Definitely
our
Eberron.
worlds to have more people join us.
Oh yeah,
What did
that's
you
the
enjoy
Lord of
most
Blades.
about working on this?
What I enjoyed the most was that we tried a lot of things. There was a lot of process and a lot of iteration for all of the design work. And I think what we hope is that when players pick this up, that they do not see a lot of iteration. They see a clear and understandable piece of design and presentation of game mechanics and information. So that collaboration, that iteration, that was my favorite part of this. It's made for a very long process, and it's been one that's we've all been working on it on the side while working on other products through over the course of the past couple of years. But it feels like it's coming to fruition in a very satisfying way.
Do you have non-graphic design things that are your favorite in the book?
Yes, the art goes without saying. I think is sort of like the showpiece of like flipping through the book. You will always be blown away by that. But I think one of the cool things that I got a window in this couple of years of iteration working on layout was getting a little bit of a glimpse into the mind of Jeremy Crawford, and that how little hierarchy changes in game mechanics and in rule sets make for a huge difference in how you not only read and sort of ingest it, but how you understand it. And I just found that like truly fascinating by how just like changing a sentence to something with like a list, or changing hierarchy and using a sans serif typeface before a serif typeface. Like those little decisions, there's a lot of thought that goes into them. And hopefully you don't notice it, because if you don't notice it and you grasp the information or are able to play without thinking about it, then we've succeeded. So that is my favorite thing that I have seen over the course of the past couple of years, getting a little glimpse of how that works from a game design perspective.
We're almost at the print review, final print review. How does this feel for you? It's been a few years.
When I'm holding that first copy, it will still probably take me a while to think it's real, but it feels good, because the team of us working on this book, we worked I mentioned it several times, that collaborative experience of iteration and working together to make sure every piece was it. There was none of us were working in silos. We were very much a team on that. Not that we aren't in all the products that we work on here, but this one felt specifically.
All hands on deck.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's wild to think that it's almost finished. There's not one part that is my favorite. It's the people I get to work with. It's the artists that I feel so like I'm their fans. They are the ones, like making all of this happen. I get like I get a little. It's the artists I get to work with to do the back and forth and to hear their ideas and to be inspired by them. It's getting to work with Matt, my graphic designer, and just see how thoughtful he is in presenting the information, because 10 years ago I was the one in his seat and I'm just blown away, like, oh, that's a great idea. Like, I wish I had thought of that. And I'm constantly learning everything from, Jeremy and Josh and all of the leads, all of the writers, the editors. There's so much consideration and so much love put into these books. Like, getting to just be along for the ride and learn from these wonderful people is my favorite part. So
How important is art to the legacy of D&D?
each edition has kind of had a look to it. I think people look back on the edition that they played or that was meaningful to them, maybe where they started, and that holds a very special place. Like and I think to be able to contribute to being a part of that visual legacy, I think is pretty wild. And to also shepherd it forward into continuing to evolve it and bring more artists in and expand the ways we can depict D&D, I think is pretty awesome.
When you pre-order the digital physical bundle, you also get an exclusive description.
Thank you so much for watching. We have a ton of video content coming out about the new Player's Handbook and all the new core rulebooks, the new Monster Manual, the new Dungeon Master's Guide. So be sure to check out all of that content. And thank you for watching.
Okay, so that's the last bit of content they came out with so far. And this last video came out 3 days ago. So I don't know when they're going to come out with more videos. Right now they're showcasing stuff about Quest of the Infinite Staircase, which is the last 5th edition book they're coming out with. So I think they're just focusing on that currently until it's out there, and then they can put all their efforts towards the 2024 stuff. So I'm going to be coming out with more videos about this content as it releases. I know the embargo on the Player's Handbook lifts on April 1st, so people will finally begin talking about it. I will be keeping a lookout for information as it arrives, and I'll find a way to get that information to you guys once I learn it. But I personally won't be able to get a look at the Player's Handbook until it actually releases early on September 1st, because I do plan on pre-ordering these so I can get a look at them as early as possible. So yeah, I'll find a way to get more content out within the next month until then. But that's gonna be it for today's video. So hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want more content from me, and I'll catch you guys later. But until then, have a great rest of your day. See ya.